about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So finally, some good news. This is breaking news. Russia is releasing prisoners Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan in a prisoner swap. It's about time this has happened. Thank God we have some good news to report. But the United States and Russia have carried out a historic prisoner exchange today. 24 detainees, including former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan and Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, were released as part of a deal that involved at least 7 countries. This is a massive swap that involves not only the U.S., but Russia, Belarus, Germany. And we are being told that Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan are now in U.S. custody, which is a huge win. They said a total of 8 people, including convicted Russian assassin Vadim Krasakov, were swapped back to Russia in exchange for the release of 16 people who were held in Russian detention, including 4 Americans. They said, in addition to Whelan and Gershkovich, according to CNN, prominent Putin critic Vladimir Kara-Murza, who is a U.S. permanent resident, and Russian-American journalist, and I apologize, the internet is acting up, Alsu Kermasheva, were also freed. And so this is President Joe Biden is going to be making a announcement. I don't know why it took so long. I'm not exactly sure who we're giving back, but I am just so glad that we are getting our Americans back. And, this is something that has been going on, for a while. And it's interesting to see why Putin is working with these other countries as well as the U.S. But this is right now the largest international prisoner exchange since the Cold War. So Evan Gershkovich, as you remember, is the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's only 32 years old. He was working as a correspondent in Moscow in March 2023 when Russian security forces detained him on charges of espionage, according to the Washington Post. Russian prosecutors said he collected secret information about the Uralvagonzavod military factory in Russia's Yekaterinburg region while on assignment from the CIA. Now, the White House said this is completely fabricated, declared him wrongfully detained, but have been unable until today to get him back. So, it was a closed-door trial, and in mid-July, he was sentenced to 16 years of prison. We had just talked about how he, unfortunately, was going to serve 16 years. But fortunately, we were able to get him back on this prisoner swap. Paul Whelan, a Marine who became a corporate security executive, only 54 years old, has been detained in Russia now for about 6 years, I think. And he is one of the longest held and most highly profile Americans detained in Russia. He has citizenship in the U.S., Canada, Britain, and Ireland. But he was visiting Russia to attend a wedding in 2018. Russian Federal Security Service arrested him on accusations of espionage. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused him of being caught red-handed during a spy mission where he was to retrieve a flash drive with sensitive information. Really? His attorney at the time said his client unwittingly received the flash drive during the visit. Whelan has maintained his innocence throughout. He's a former Marine, and so thank God he's coming home. You'll all hear more about some of the other prisoners and the prisoner exchange, but they say a total of 24 prisoners from 7 different countries were freed. And so the exchange took place in Ankara, Turkey, on Thursday morning. They have previously mediated prisoner exchange between Russia and the West. So the Wall Street Journal is absolutely excited. They said today is a joyous day for the safe return of our colleague Evan Gershkovich. People in the media do run some pretty significant risks. And in the media, remember movies have sensationalized this, like Lois Lane and things like that. But to get the story and to get the coverage that people get, oftentimes they do put their lives on the line. And I'm not saying this is what Evan did, but when you when you have really good journalists, people who have good work ethic, they don't get to necessarily get the picture of the fire or the picture of the crime, from far away. And you notice if you can't see anything, you turn away. And so people in media, these journalists, they don't really get the protection they need if they are, let's say, covering a story. Or they are, and when you have a country who may want to hold hostages to bargain for other, shall we say, prisoners to come back, Americans that are in these countries are at risk. I think right now the U.S. is telling people Americans not to visit Lebanon, because right now Lebanon is with their attack on Israel, and it's a dangerous time. And so Americans can very, very sadly become pawns in this political mayhem. And it's you take a trip to Russia for a wedding. I've always wanted to see Russia. I've always wanted to see Moscow, see St. Petersburg. No way, I'm never going now. China as well. Love to see China. Love to see the Great Wall of China, but love to see Lebanon. But unfortunately, unless you have security detail, it's not safe. And a big fear we have is Russia going to try to hold more individuals, so then they have more bartering later. And it's frightening. It's very, very scary. It's also scary that it took this long. So congratulations on those entities, including the Biden administration, for finally getting them out of there. And Gershkovich, he handled it, but his story, I'm dying to hear his story and what it was like, and what he went through. And just thank God, I think they shaved his head, and though he doesn't look as well as he did originally, and of course he's probably not getting the best food and health care while he's in a Russian prison, but he had been sentenced to 16 years. So thank God he was able to be able to come home. So we'll give you guys breaking news as we get it. Don't go away. A lot to talk about today. 1-877 Doc Dali.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dali, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer. Don't forget to follow us on X or Twitter at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So we speak a lot about tuberculosis on the show. But did you know that thousands of Americans are living with a hidden lung infection that mimics tuberculosis? And we haven't spoken a lot about non-tuberculosis mycobacteria, which is a growing health threat that affects lung health and is often diagnosed. I am very, very excited about our next guest, Amy Lietman, president of NTM Info and Research, who is at the forefront of this battle to kind of raise awareness and educate the public so that they don't get misdiagnosed and do not delay treatment. She has a decade of advocacy, personal connection with the disease because she's the daughter of a patient who has had non-tuberculosis mycobacteria. Trusted voice for patients, key figure in the fight against it. And I am so grateful in all she's done to increase research, patient support, education, and it's such an invaluable resource. So I'm very, very excited. Dr. Amy Lietman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. And it's World NTM, or Non-Tuberculosis Mycobacteria Day, that is celebrated this week, August 4th. So thank you so much. Talk to us about what NTM lung disease is.
Sure. So NTM stands for non-tuberculous mycobacteria. This is a group of bacteria that are environmental pathogens. They're found in soil and water, and they survive water treatment. So they're in the potable water supply. You know, we're just kind of surrounded by them all the time, and most of the time we don't notice it, but when we end up with a health problem, that's when we have to really start paying attention. There are over 200,000 cases in the U.S. of NTM lung disease right now, and that number is increasing 8% a year. So that's why we feel it's really important to start raising awareness. It's obviously not just in the U.S., it's around the world, but we started here in the U.S. My late stepmom had the disease, and she met a lot of patients just like her who didn't have a lot of information. So she and my dad started this organization to help patients like her. And last year, on August 4th, we launched the first World NTM Awareness Day, and this year we are continuing the tradition, and we're very excited about it.
Oh, good for you for doing this. And, as a physician, it's getting very challenging where many people with lung illness or lung disease or symptoms, which we're going to discuss, call telemedicine. And telemedicine will diagnose it as, it's a bronchitis and so some individuals don't get actually tested. So I think the numbers might even be greater than that.
Yeah, the numbers are definitely greater than that. We know it's underdiagnosed. We know it's misdiagnosed. It's not a challenging diagnosis. The diagnostic tools are fairly simple. It's a CT scan. It's you get a culture, an AFB culture with the mucus that comes out of the lungs, but you have to sort of get to the point where there's some kind of suspicion that this might be happening. So, you have to sort of get the doctors into the mindset where they think about that. So if you have a patient that's had, more than 2 lower respiratory infections in a year, it's time to start looking at what might be going on in the lungs. Is there an underlying problem like bronchiectasis, which is a scarring that makes it harder to clear mucus from the lungs? Do you have a patient that's, complaining of fatigue, cough, and shortness of breath? Because those are the hallmark symptoms that patients, report the most on. So
exactly.
If a patient has like these ongoing chronic issues and they're reporting on these things, that might be when it's time to start looking for something like NTM.
Exactly. And, you're raising this awareness, and I think that's important because the more we have other options for people to seek medical care, the more we need to educate people themselves. And so, how can individuals learn more about this and, be aware of what could be going on?
You can visit the website for World NTM Awareness Day, which is worldntmday.org. From that website, you'll be able to link to our main website, which is the hub of all things NTM. You will see information about World NTM Day and the awareness campaign that we're going to be having throughout the month of August. There's going to be a lot of social media awareness, so you can look for us online as well and help amplify that message. And also throughout the month of August, we're going to be hosting a series of webinars that are led by experts in this disease state. And those webinars are free, so you can sign up for those webinars, and we hope you will. And they're open to everybody. And you, like I said, go to worldntmday.org. All of that information you can find right from that one page. And if you or a loved one has NTM, you can also find peer support through our support group network, which you can also find information about from our website.
That's fantastic. So review the symptoms again. Cough, shortness of breath. How does it differ from, or does it even differ from some of the other? Tuberculosis could often come with blood in the sputum. What are you seeing in terms of the symptoms?
Yeah, so that blood in the sputum, which is called hemoptysis, some patients do have that actually. But it's this sort of chronic thing that doesn't go away, or, sometimes, you'll get a short-term prescription of antibiotics and it goes away for a little bit, but then it comes back. So it's this sort of chronic or repetitive thing, but that fatigue, cough, shortness of breath, those are the three main symptoms. And if it's not resolving, that's when you need to start sort of, taking a deeper look, because it often is misdiagnosed as asthma or bronchitis or pneumonia, and other things. We've actually had patients misdiagnosed with anxiety. And the thing is, they're not sick because they're suffering from anxiety. They're anxious because they're sick, and nobody knows what's wrong with them.
So true. So true. Many people think they might be having a panic attack, or they might, and a lot of times there could be some, medical pathology going on. How's your dad and mother-in-law doing, by the way?
So my late stepmom, she passed away about 11 years ago after a very, very long fight. She fought it for almost 2 decades. And when she started the organization, she knew that this was a long-term fight and that she might not live to see the end of it. But her objective, and my father's objective, was really to start an organization that would sort of help catalyze research. And we've seen that in the last 10 years. We've seen this tremendous growth in this area. We're seeing a lot more clinical trials for new treatments now. We're seeing clinical trials that are looking at these adjunct therapies for airway clearance and other support that help manage the disease. We're seeing clinical trials now for things like bronchiectasis, which is that underlying lung scarring that makes it harder to, clear the mucus. We're seeing, clinical trials for drugs that are going to sort of help manage the inflammation that's associated with bronchiectasis. So it's sort of this two-pronged approach to treating this disease. So there's been so much progress, and it's really wonderful to see. And this is a wonderful legacy that she's left for us.
Love it. Love it. So, so a lot of patients think they might have COVID, long COVID. They'll call telemedicine. What are your recommended steps for people to ensure early diagnosis and effective treatment?
Sure. So, I think, with long COVID, there's certain kinds of things that people talk about. They talk about, that brain fog and other things. And there may be some of that as well. But, COVID, like any other lung infection, can cause scarring. And that scarring is really an underlying factor that can make you more susceptible to lung infections in general. So I think that's what you want to be careful of. So if you're having these lung infections, or if you're starting to cough up mucus, if you're having still having shortness of breath, you really need to keep on top of it and keep monitoring what's happening. You want your doctors to look at and see what's happening in your lungs, get a CT scan, get some pulmonary function testing to see how well your lungs are working. Talk to your physicians. Maybe you can get some pulmonary rehabilitation. But the most important thing really is to get through the diagnostics and figure out exactly what's happening with your lungs.
Exactly. And like you said, it's easy for us to test. We could do sputum culture. We could do a scan. And so we just have to get you seen in person. And oftentimes that can, help expedite your getting diagnosed.
Right. So even with telehealth, if you have a patient who's had sort of these repeated telehealth appointments and they're complaining about these repeated issues and it's not resolving, that may be the time to say, okay, it's time to bring you in for a test.
In the final minute, how can my listeners help your efforts and get involved?
Please visit worldntmday.org, and you can learn so much more about us. It links out to our main website, ntminfo.org, which is the hub of all things NTM. From there, you can learn about everything having to do with this disease. There's a lot of information on there. For World NTM Day, you can help amplify our message by, spreading the news, spreading awareness. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Amplify our messages by reposting them. Please sign up for our webinars. Like I said, they're free, and you'll learn a lot more. And,
Awesome.
If you have a loved one or a friend who's having these repeated lung problems and they're not getting better, maybe tell them, hey, it's time for you to go to the doctor and ask them to take a closer look. So you can visit worldntmday.org and find all that information there.
Love it. Amy Liebman, thank you so much. God bless, and can't wait to have you back.
Thank you.
All right, guys, don't go away. We'll be right back. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. We really do appreciate your calls, your comments. We understand there has been a little bit of issue getting podcasts, and you'll try to listen live. We also try and stream the show, but there's been a little bit of a technical issue. We will get back online as soon as we can, but fortunately we still have our live shows and our shows on radio. So this was very interesting what happened with the Olympics. And this is something where I think we need to have a conversation and figure out what it is that America wants. Are we progressing in women's sports? Are we progressing in transgender rights? We're going to have an honest conversation because a female boxer had to quit about 46 seconds into the event because she said that the hits she was getting from her transgender opponent she said she's never been hit like that before. And so I have a problem when we are hypocritical and not consistent with what society feels is just, fair, and the right, and the right way to progress. And so when you see something like this happens, it means we haven't solved the problem. Now, I think the Olympics had decided, well, if they qualify based on, and we talked about the IOC guidelines. I'm not going to go back through them, but if they qualify for being, even if they're biologically male, for transgender female, and they fit the qualifications, we can have them compete in the female side of sports. Apparently, it's not working if your Olympians are quitting. So just to recap what happened, this was between Italy's Angela Carini and her Algerian opponent, Iman Khalif. And after 46 seconds, Angela threw her helmet down and said, "This is unjust." And she was sobbing. She left. I think after 2 punches, she left. And Khalif had not been able to compete in the World Championships after failing testosterone tests that were used to carry out gender qualification. Apparently, he qualified now for the Olympics, including another, I believe, transgender female boxer. But the issue we're having is one, we have male teams. Oh, I apologize. We're having some audio come in. Why do we have audio come in? I'm sorry. This is my audio. Sometimes their audio is better than my audio, Some people would probably rather hear the ads. But we have male sports and we have female sports. And why do we have male and female sports? Well, because men are different. They're biologically different. And so the Olympics, I posted some videos of Olympics done over 100 years ago where you saw the men and women compete. And, women had been sidelined in sports for so long. And now, if you've seen how amazing they are, I mean, look at the WNBA. Look at how women have been able to break a lot of barriers and show their athletic abilities with weightlifting, with boxing, but the reason why the Olympics has male categories and female categories is, one, because males may have certain advantages. Two, there's safety, because if you do have somebody that has a lot of advantages, it could unfortunately affect a component that may not have those same advantages. And also, it helps eliminate some of the possibilities there. It doesn't eliminate it entirely, but in terms of showering and any sexual harassment or accidentally being touched, women bang into each other, hit boobs, whatever, it doesn't become a court case. It doesn't become an assault case. It becomes an assault case when you have a male, a biological male, and a female. And so the male and female categories, albeit maybe not perfect, have worked for now. Now we have individuals who are identifying as female, and they are excelling to great lengths in sports, making it to the Olympics. And so our messaging of, we keep women and men separate. Women you never hit a girl. It's wrong to hit a girl. Girls can hit girls and boys can hit boys, but a boy cannot hit a girl. Now these things are starting to be swept to the side because we're trying to be progressive in transgender rights. And so if we are going to have biological males then compete with biological females, it begs the question, are we done with having male and female, I guess, events? And it's a concern because when your Olympians have trained mind you have some pretty tall women out there. You have some, you have people who may be intersex, where they were born hermaphrodite, born with both male and female characteristics, raised female. So they do have maybe the height and the muscle mass, and they have a lot of characteristics that could be, but for the most part, we've been able to protect women in sports and allow them to progress if we didn't have males participating in the event as well. And I think we need to make a decision on what we're going to do. If we are going to allow there to be the intersex and the reason why people ask, why is this an issue? Why don't we just have transgender males or transgender females be with their biological counterparts? It's because when somebody identifies as a female or a male or anything else that they want to identify on, society wants to embrace that. Society wants to say, look, we are here with you. Okay, well, that's fine until we get to somebody wants to identify as a minority so they could qualify for a scholarship, or somebody wants to identify as something to get, if it's going to be used as an advantage, maybe that's the conversation we need to have, where it's, and people could say, well, those with transgender, transitional challenges are not at an advantage and they do want to compete in sports. Then we need to have a decision on how we're going to do it. Should they compete in their biological male or in a female category? If it's going to be a female category and there's not going to be safety, there's not going to be those protections in place, there's going to be an unfair advantage, then maybe we just get rid of male and female. And you have the race, you have the event, and then, but you don't do that. Why? Because women could get hurt if they get boxed and hit by somebody who's biologically male and has much more physical qualities to them. So it's, I think the easier path to go is to number one, not force somebody who's transgender to suppress and alter and go on a very uncomfortable and dangerous hormone path just to be able to qualify to be with women. I think that's cruel, too, to the transgender community. So I think what needs to be done is if you're biological male, you perform in the biological male category. If you're biologically female, you perform in the biologically female category. But I don't think what we're doing is working, especially since we have for years tried to progress to get women to be able to be represented in sports in Olympics. And it's not fair. And safety comes first. Now, these cases, yes, are far and few between, but we're having them. We're having in high schools, girls getting pummeled by their transgender counterpart. You would think this would have never been an issue, but it is. And as a physician, if we're trying to help the transgender community, this doesn't help. Saying, you know what, look, we're out, you just get the medal. That's not it. The transgender community wants to earn their medals too. They don't, and when you speak to a lot of people in the transgender community, I have them in my family, they don't necessarily want what's happening now to happen. And so when you do have isolated individuals end up, identifying and then competing and then blowing away the competition, it starts to then put the LGBTQ community in this light that many of them don't want to be in. So nobody wants a man hitting a girl and the girl feeling like she can't compete. But this is where the conversation is right now, and I think we could do a better job. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Dr. Daliah and on Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show. Devin asks, why aren't antibiotics over the counter? There's birth control over the counter. There's Plan B over the counter. Why not antibiotics if they're safer? So this is a question we get often. Why aren't antibiotics readily available? They're available in Mexico. They're available in other countries. I think America will eventually move to that I think somebody is going to find it popular enough politically to request that happens, and we will be eventually seeing antibiotics over the counter. The problem we have, though, from a medical standpoint is the resistance. And, I usually am on your guys' side, okay? It's cheaper for you to be able to go to the grocery store or go to the drugstore, get what you need over the counter, and not have to go in and see your doctor. Blame Obamacare for that, though, by the way. That's not my fault. Your high deductible makes it ridiculous. These now high copays to see the medical provider, now that got started with Obamacare, and now it's being perpetuated by the high cost of drugs and these weight loss drugs and all the other things that's making our health insurance want to figure out how to nickel and dime us so that they could pay for these more expensive drugs for other people. And I get it. If you could just get the antibiotic that you want that always works over the counter, get your Z-Pack, grab a stick of gum, and then leave the store, why not? Well, as a doctor, I do have to say, and here's why. Okay. Number one is we are really devaluing and ignoring what services a doctor provides. Now, it's the doctor's fault that that's happening. When I tell a patient, look, you need a doctor to listen to your heart and lungs, and they go, my doctor never does. They come in for 2 seconds, they just give me an antibiotic and leave. They don't examine me. Okay, then patients have a point. But as we spoke about with the mycobacteria, lung infections, the non-tuberculosis infections, when we talk about cancer, these are getting found when you have a medical provider do their job. And if a medical provider is allowed to do their job, they could pick up on things. There was a patient who kept being diagnosed with a UTI, and by the time somebody finally did their job, she actually had stage 3 cervical cancer, where it was spreading. Now, if you are not feeling well, and you think, okay, you know what, I think it's a UTI, let me just go and get an antibiotic over the counter, nobody is stopping to look at what could be going on. I am very embarrassed by these medical professionals out there that are half-assed. And you guys aren't lying. When you tell me that your doctor isn't even doing your pelvic exams, they just refer you out, or they're not checking your prostate, or they're not listening to your heart and lungs, you're not wrong. I believe you. Which is why it's going to be a matter of time that medicines are just over the counter. If doctors are not doing their job, please. We have telehealth, which is challenging, a great benefit for those individuals who can't talk to a doctor, so at least they could get some advice. But people say, look, my doctor will just give me an antibiotic over the phone. Why do I need the doctor? Let me just go and get my own antibiotic. Well, what if your UTI is not a UTI, but it's an STI? What if the reason why you're having burning when you pee is somebody had sex with you who had hepatitis or HIV as well as chlamydia? You're thinking you have a UTI, so you try to get a UTI antibiotic. Meanwhile, you're not getting better. Now, people will say, well, if I don't get better, then I'll go to the doctor. No, I see. People will call telemedicine 4 times in a week rather than go in and get seen. So I want to make sure the HIV is getting diagnosed, the hepatitis is getting diagnosed, the cancer is getting diagnosed. If everybody and their mother are taking Z-Packs and azithromycin for every time they get a cough or cold, then that's not going to work. You know, we were just talking about this non-tuberculosis mycobacterium. You know what antibiotic works for that? Z-Pack, azithromycin in some cases. So our medicines are getting very diluted. They're being overused. And there needs to be a process in place. Unfortunately, the process isn't being done. Remember I predicted we were going to have a Tamiflu shortage? And the reason why I predicted that is people were going to use telemedicine and say they had the flu. And when the doctor said, but look, this could be COVID, they would say, oh, I took a COVID test, it was negative. Just give me the Tamiflu and get it. Well, before flu season even hit, we a couple years ago ran out of Tamiflu because people in August and September said they were COVID negative because the test didn't pick it up, which can sometimes happen where the test doesn't pick it up. They called in telehealth and they got Tamiflu over the phone. And we ended up running out. That's a problem. If avian flu hits humans, if a more severe sort of flu hits us, Tamiflu, Zofluza, these are the medications we need to use. We need to have ample supply of, and they need to be ready to go and we shouldn't have resistance to it. Unfortunately, I saw a patient who said, I have COVID, and I look back a few days ago, a previous doctor, we're talking this summer, gave them Tamiflu for seasonal flu because the patient said, I have flu. Nobody tested the patient. Nobody explained to the patient that we really don't have a lot of flu cases. There's some one-offs deep in the summer, but flu season roughly goes October to May. So we just wasted a prescription of Tamiflu. So if we end up having antivirals over the counter, and we end up having antibiotics over the counter, people are going to be using them to the point where there's just not going to be enough, and they're not going to be getting the right diagnoses. Tamiflu does not treat COVID. Now, you're infecting the whole family with COVID, and you never got treated when we have a COVID medication to treat. So I don't think we're ready for it. And I know that's really unpopular with you guys. I always want to be on your side. I agree with you on most things, but I am not ready for antibiotics to be over the counter. And it's not a money thing. Trust me, I don't make a lot of money. Sometimes nothing at all. You getting an antibiotic over the phone. I told you one insurance company was paying us $2.42. It's ridiculous. So this isn't about a money thing and trying to keep my job. But I can't tell you how many times somebody thought they had something they needed an antibiotic for, and they had something else. My father, the last words he said before he died was he told my mom he thought he was sick, and he wants to ask me about antibiotics. And then he dropped dead of a heart attack. I'm not telling you that every time you think you have bronchitis, you're having a heart attack, but come on. I had somebody come in asking for a Z-Pack. He looked kind of gray to me. And I was like, I don't think you have bronchitis. And even though bronchitis, you're really not supposed to treat with Z-Packs because most bronchitises are viral. But this was years ago. And I ended up checking his blood sugar because something didn't seem right. And he was over 400. He maxed out on our machine. I sent him to the hospital. He was going into DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, and could have been comatose in the next few hours. Yet he came in asking for an antibiotic. So I don't want people misdiagnosing themselves, grabbing medicines that they don't need that could be useful for other individuals, and then dropping, and collapsing at home. So if you ask me what medications would I be okay with over the counter, I might be okay with Valtrex, an antiviral for cold sores. We have a lot of people calling asking for antivirals. There are side effects with antivirals and drug interactions, but I think that's still not the best idea because eventually if you have shingles or another type of virus, there's going to be resistance. So we need to do a better job of figuring out when and how to use our medications, but I get how frustrating it is that you can't get it over the phone or online or at a store. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.